Well, you guys may have noticed that my workbench seems a little brighter than normal. That's because I've got this monstrosity of a 65 watt compact fluorescent bulb over my bench now. The one to the left is a standard, I think that's a 23 watt one. It's a small one. That's because that's on part of the garage lights. This is on my bench light. And of course I have the 42 watter, which has been here for a while, and the other one that I fixed, which is still working, and it's over there. That's the one that I fixed. Anyway, on this video we have another troublesome Sony DAT machine here. This one's the DTC 790 again. This thing here has had multiple problems over the years. This has got a lot of hours on it, this deck. It was one of my more heavily used decks that has, literally it's got hundreds and hundreds of hours on this thing. And this is the one I put the lights on, put the little lights in here behind the display there last year. Well, I'll show you what it's doing now. I turned it on, and as you can see, the tape guides are in the loaded position. There's no tape in it, but the tape guides are in the loaded position. I'm just going to plug it in now. We'll turn it on. You'll see the guides don't retract. So something's gotten wrong with it. The tape compartment opens and closes, but as you can see, the mechanism is jammed. So let's take the mechanism out on this and see why it's jammed. My guess is it's probably one of those silly pin switches. This is the mechanism that has the slide. There's a single a plastic slide plate that controls the loading and unloading, and it's got a couple of little pin switches which signal whether it's loaded or unloaded. My guess is one of those switches is not working right, but let's find out. Now, I really understand why so many people hate this format, because it's so mechanical, right? You've got rotating heads, and I mean, it's like a mini VCR, right? But I actually still kind of like the format. I guess it's more nostalgia. I like to deal with old tape formats. I've still got reel-to-reel tapes kicking around as well, and I don't use cassette, though. I never really did much work with cassette over the years. It was more of a format that I would listen to in the car if I had to. And I even had a DAT machine in the car. It was more about the quality, right? I was more interested in the quality of the sound. But most of these DAT machines that I haven't spent a lot of money acquiring. I've got a couple that I purchased. Actually, I got one that I bought. And all the rest of these ones I've acquired very inexpensively, you know, like $20 here, $15 there. You know, just bid on them on an auction when they were, you know, cheap, because they were cheap. Okay, let's take a look at this mechanism and see if there's anything jumping out at me here. Well, right off the start, I can see there's a crack in this gear. I don't think that's causing my problem though, but that gear does have a crack in it. It's only got a crack on one side. If it were to crack all the way through, we would have a problem, but there's a crack. Definitely a crack in that gear. But that's not why it's not loading and unloading. Let's turn the mechanism by hand and see if we can unload it. The switches that I'm referring to that are problematic on these are these ones right down here on this little green circuit board here. There's a couple of little switches down here that are little pin switches that signal when the mechanism is loaded and unloaded. In order to load this mechanism by hand, we can turn this black gear here. This is the loading gear, and that'll put the mechanism through its paces. So if I turn it, you can see, if you watch the guides, you'll see the guides coming back down. So we don't really have a mechanical problem on here. The guides are loading and unloading. I'm thinking it might be more along the lines of one of those switches is not being read correctly. So if I power the unit up and I press the open close door button. It'll close down. Now, in order to make the machine think there's a tape in it, there's a couple little buttons down there. If I press these little pin switches, it should load. If it detects that there's a tape in here. I just have to do this quickly. Okay, load, and if I close down these pin switches, the thing should thread up. There it goes. But it jams. It's now threaded, and I've got the caution message on the screen here. So I'm thinking it's not reading one of these switches that's telling the microcontroller that the mechanism is completely loaded. That's what I think is happening. But then, hey, what do I know? So we'll just undo the screws here that hold these pin switches in place. There's 3 screws. I've already taken out the other 2. And then we should be able to lift out these switches, if I remember correctly. The little whole circuit board here, I think, can lift out. I may have to take the side plate off of here. It's been a while since I've taken one of these mechanisms apart. I just remembered how much of a pain in the ass this one was to work on. It's not a nice, easy one to work on like the some of the other ones that I've worked on in the past. If I lift this out of the way now, I should be able to lift the switch assembly out of here. Oh, one more screw. One more screw in the tape detection switch here. That's got to come out right down here. Right down in there. And then I should be able to lift this side out of the piece out of the way. I should be able to lift these switches out and swing them out of the way. These are the pin switches I was referring to right here. These little switches can get dirty, and if these contacts go bad, this is what reads the load and unload position for the mechanism switch. And we're going to put a little bit of cleaner in on these switches here. These little pin switches are evil. Source of problems. Anything that uses these little switches is always a source of problems. The TCD3 portable DAT used them as well, and they were just always just headaches, like sources of just pain in the butt, because the switches would go dirty and then the machine wouldn't work properly, and you'd have all kinds of strange errors. And just take that side off there. There's a little clip that holds that in place. So I'll probably clean these other 2 switches up top here as well. These are the record and tape in switches. These machines actually work best if you use them all the time too. The problem that happens is this machine here, this is one I used to use a lot for transferring stuff over. And it has lots of hours on it. And then I took it out of service and I put another one that I picked up off eBay. And I moved this one to just a secondary playback location that I could take like a 6-hour mixtape. I would have 6-hour tapes that were recorded in the LP speed for just background music, and I would put this in my living room and I'd play it. I'd just let the tape play. And the thing is, I don't get a chance to listen to it that often. My kids don't like the music I listen to, and if I turn on any music at all, when they're within earshot, the first thing they're doing is they're turning it off. So I don't get to use this one as much as I would like, and it sits, and then when I go to use it, it doesn't work. And that's just typical of electronics, right? That seems to be the way things are. Electronics are, if they're not being used on a regular basis, they are going to break down. So we'll put the switch back in and put the screws back in to hold the switch in place. At this point, I don't know how much of a problem that cracked gear is going to be, if any. It's probably been cracked for a while. Got to get all these pieces lined up here. Lots of fun. Resetting the mechanism back in, we just have to line up the spring over here, and when I work this through by hand, it should lift up and it should close down. I think that's how it works. And that should lift up and the tape compartment open like that, and then when I close it, it closes the door. That's how it's supposed to work. Let's see whether it actually will work when we turn on the power. Okay, power on. Press the open button. It opens. Press the close button. That sounds better. No caution. Let's open it up. And it opens. Let's mount the chassis and try a tape. The chassis just goes back in place, lines up with the 4 holes, and we just have the 4 screws that hold the chassis back in place. What did I do with them? There's one, and there are the other 3 there. I guess I've always admired these digital audio tape decks just because they're cool. They're like a mini VCR, right? Helical scanning. There's a lot. I mean, these things were really quite capable machines, and they were engineering marvels. That's what they were. Power on, and open sesame. That part's working. Let's put our tape cover back in. Once again, we'll open the tape door up, put our tape in, and see whether it will thread up. That's good. This tape's got a bit of damage at the beginning of it, so let's just see if it will play. I'm sure it will. Of course it does. Oh yes, this tape has some damage to it. I think I just have to get past that damage section. Okay, there, we're past the damage section. It got a bit chewed up, this tape. So there we go. So there we go. We have it working once again. And I think what I'll do is that there's a damage section at the beginning of this tape, because this tape got crunched, probably by this machine actually. We're going to take that section. I'm just going to cut that section of tape out, because whenever I run this tape at the very beginning, it has a bit of a problem. So I think what we'll do is we'll cut that section of tape out, just because what happens is when I first started up, it's probably going to stop. At least it loses sync there a bit at the beginning. Right at the very beginning, there's a few crunches in this tape, but I think I can probably cut that section out. Anyway, it's working, as you can hear. So another one fixed. Troublesome DAT machines. They're quite mechanical. They're kind of tedious. I kind of enjoy working on them though, because they remind me of my days of fixing VCRs. And of course nobody uses VCRs anymore. Nobody uses DAT tape anymore either, except for collectors like myself. I have quite a large library of tapes. Many of them are mixed tapes that you know, I can put on and let them play for 4 or 6 hours. I have a lot of 6-hour tapes, even though the DAT format in the 32 kilohertz mode, a 2-hour tape would only play for 4 hours. But I have a number of these media tapes, these Maxell HS 490s, which were 90-meter tapes for computers. These will run for 3 hours in the standard play speed, and they'll run for 6 hours in the LP speed, and that's basically what I use it for. Just let this thing play music. Anyway, thanks for watching. We'll catch you in the next one. I got a bunch of stuff here. I'll show you what's coming up in the not too distant future. So that fine pile of equipment is going to be featured on some future videos. We have a JVC amplifier, a Toshiba cassette deck, a couple of CD players, a Denon and a Kai, and there's a couple of DVD players in there too. This was recently donated to the cause to look at, so we'll see some videos coming up on these. I'm even going to take a gander at this Alpine car deck at some point, and we'll take that apart and see what's going on with that one. Here's a view of it rewinding this tape at high speed. This mechanism that Sony made, this was the I guess one of the last generations of consumer DAT machine that Sony made, and they really made the mechanism much less expensive to make than their ES series. If you remember the video from, well, I have 2 decks. I have I think it's a 680 and the DTC 75ES, I think that's the model number. And they both use the same mechanism. It's a much better mechanism, much stronger mechanism than this. It uses actually a rotary encoder with a little gear. It turns, as the mechanism loads and unloads, it turns a rotary encoder switch, like my Tascam. This is the one that uses these little pin switches. This was almost borrowed from the DAT Walkman, although the DAT Walkman uses a smaller drum and a 180-degree wrap instead of a 90-degree wrap. I'm just rewinding this tape back to the beginning. You'll probably see the damage on this tape. There, you can see the creases. That's the damage to this tape. So I'm just running this through. I'm going to run this tape. I'm going to run this tape through this thing a few times. That's caused by the damage to the tape. There'll be another crease coming through. You can see it here. So once that plays through, though, it's fine. Anyway, I'm going to let this thing run here for a bit on my workbench, and before I put it back into service, I can put this back into my living room and use it a little more often so that it doesn't go bad just from sitting. That's the problem with these little pin switches that we found on this one and on the portable DAT, is that if they are not being regularly used, this one here, I think if you look at other videos where I've taken this mechanism apart, because I have taken it apart, it uses a mechanical slide plate that loads and unloads the loading arms. And they tried to simplify the design, making a lot of things out of plastic, and they use 2 little switches that there's little cam levers or little raised indentations and raised cams on that main loading cam. The loading gear drives it back and forth to load and unload it, and to turn on to engage the pinch roller and disengage it, and engage and disengage the brake pads for the tape spool. And when those little switches get dirty, well, you get the caution message that happened on this. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Hopefully this machine will run me for many more years. I just went and checked my inventory of tapes, and I have over 100 DAT tapes that I've collected over the years, so I'd like to be able to continue to play them for a while. They're all backups, right? They're not my original. Everything I've got has been ripped off CD or recorded off the radio. I've got some old radio programs though that are kind of hard to come by. So I've got 4 DAT machines now. I think I'm good for a while. Thanks for watching.